I pressed record before I even fully understood what I was hearing, just in time to catch my son explaining exactly how they'd get me arrested, declared unstable, and sell everything I ever built. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. They planned it on a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the gutters choke and the yard smells like wet leaves and rot. I had stepped out to the back porch to turn off the hose I'd left trickling on the rosemary, leaving my phone on the kitchen counter, still connected to the tiny hearing aid charger that serves as a microphone when I forget and leave it on. I should thank the salesman who upsold me, because the little brick lights up when it is active, and I saw it glowing faintly through the screen door. My name is Walter Hale, I am 74 years old, and I have 2 granddaughters who can make me feel 30 again when they take my hand. I am the one who hammered the cedar beams that hold my porch upright, the one who measured, cut, and placed every plank of this floor. I am a widower, a carpenter by trade, and, if you had asked me last month, a father who always believed his son would come to his senses before the worst thing happened. And then I listened. Small, my daughter-in-law, Brianna, whispered. It has to be small. Small is enough, my son, David, replied. He will be booked and held overnight. We file while he is inside. They were in my kitchen, their voices muffled by the rain pelting the dark window. I stood outside, unseen, hand around the wet hose nozzle, as their words slipped under the door like smoke. The hearing aid streamer sent their conversation to my phone. That is what I mean by pressed record. My thumb shook, but it found the red circle fast enough. We put the tools in his basement, Brianna said. Rick across the street is always complaining about his Makita set. We tell the police Dad took them because he is confused and thinks Rick owes him. Rick will sign the report. He hates Walter. He hates everyone, David said. But yes, he will sign. I will call it in. Bree, listen, this is crucial. We do not talk about money with anyone until the day we file. We say, concern for his safety and diminished capacity. We have the videos of his forgetting the keys, we have the burner under the kettle. I turned the burner off, Brianna hissed. And I have the clip. Good, David said. We just need him in county long enough to get the emergency hearing. They spoke like planners sketching a 3-day weekend, not people tearing a life apart. The words fell cold and precise. Emergency conservatorship, temporary guardianship, property liquidation, estate protection. They had done their research. The small crime was theft. They would plant Rick's bright blue Makita box in my basement workshop, call the police, point, and stand back, clean and righteous. I leaned my forehead against the cold glass of the porch door and breathed in through my nose until the metallic taste of panic receded. The rosemary brush swayed like an old friend braced against a storm. I remembered the first time David helped me cut it back. He was 10 and left-handed and too proud to admit he'd dulled the good shears on a rock. Then we sell, Brianna whispered. Fast. We say we cannot keep up with all the payments and maintenance. Even if he gets out, he will not be able to undo a clean sale. Title is clear, David said flatly. I checked last month. Mom paid off the mortgage the year before she got sick. They had planned as if I had already died, worried about my image, my confusion, but really about the house, my truck, the retirement accounts, the coins I had inherited from my father and had, stupidly, showed off one Thanksgiving after too much wine. As if our last name meant nothing, as if we were strangers dividing a stranger's leftovers. Out on the porch, the rain slanted. Water gurgled through the downspout, then slowed. When it finally stopped, I stood very still and watched the reflection of my living room in the glass. David's silhouette. Brianna's. My phone on the counter, dark now, the hearing aid streamer had spun down. I waited until their voices moved down the hallway and the bedroom door closed. Then I stepped back inside and dried my hands with the dish towel that still smelled faintly of lemon oil. I did not confront them. Not that night. Not the next morning. There are moments in a man's life when anger is a roaring animal you want to unleash. But that animal does not build. It breaks. I am a builder. And for what they wanted to do, breaking would only have helped them. I slept badly and woke early, as old men do. The first phone call I made was to my family doctor, the second to a neuropsychologist named Patel whose name I had copied into my notebook years ago when my neighbor needed her husband evaluated after a stroke. Her receptionist said she could see me Thursday morning. I said I would be there early. The third call was harder. I called Detective Maria Rowan at the county police. She and I coached Little League together 30 years ago, and when her husband was deployed, her boy stayed at our house 3 nights a week. She is one of those rare people whose voice has not changed shape in 3 decades. It still has plain gravity inside it. "Walter," she said. "You sound like you are about to tell me something grave." I told her. Not the history. Not the why. Just what they said, what they planned, how they meant to do it, and exactly when. "You recorded them?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Voice memo. My hearing aid device transmitted the sound. "I have the file." "Do not send anything over text," she said. "Can you come to the station this afternoon? I will pull someone from property crimes and someone from the elder abuse unit." No promises. But if they are dumb enough to try it after this phone call, there might be a way to make sure they trip over their own plan. I could have cried at the steadiness in her voice. But I held it together. "I will be there in an hour," I said. "I will bring everything." Everything was a gray binder with my name in black tape across the spine. It is a habit of mine to make binders for storms, the kind you see coming and the kind you hope never arrive. Inside, my deed, a list of my bank accounts, printouts from my doorbell camera, photos of my basement from last week, when I finished the new cabinets, the inventory of my workshop tools, the appraisal on my coin collection, a letter I wrote to myself the winter after Linda died titled "If I Start Slipping." It asked me to be kind to my future self and firm with anyone who mistook grief for incompetence. Detective Rowan read the letter twice. "We will get you a fresh capacity letter anyway," she said. "But this is exactly the kind of paper that protects you when a judge is moving fast. Do you have a lawyer you trust?" "I have one I used to argue with when Linda was alive," I said. "He is a bulldog. He is expensive." "Good," she said. "Hire him." They took a copy of my audio file and transferred it to a disk they sealed in a brown evidence bag. The detective from Property Crimes, Ruiz, listened with his headphones half off, his eyebrows climbing his forehead. "They are not even subtle," he said. "We could mark the tools." "Mark everything," Rowan said. "We will need the neighbor to play ball. Rick across the street does not like anyone, not just me. He is a retired electrician who believes the world is divided into people who know how to do things and people who call you to do them for them. He puts himself in the first category and the rest of us in the second, without irony, though he has called me more times than I can count. Still, he is honest in his dislike, and I respect that." When Rowan and I knocked, he squinted at us like we were selling magazines. "My son and his wife are going to come to you," I said. They are going to ask you to file a report about your stolen tool set. Then they are going to steal it, bring it across the street, and put it in my basement. Then they are going to call the police and watch while I get hauled away. While I am away, they are going to try to sell my house." Rick blinked. "They are idiots," he said. "That may be true," Detective Rowan said, "but idiots can make a mess if they are not stopped. Will you help us stop them?" "How?" "We mark the tools," Ruiz said, lifting a tiny spray bottle from his bag. "Invisible UV dye. Only shows up under our light. We also photograph your set with today's paper in the frame, something a lawyer can use later to prove when the photos were taken. Then we wait." "I do not like waiting," Rick grunted. But he moved aside and let them in. "We worked deliberately." They sprayed the inside of the Makita box handle and the underside of the drill. "We took photos. Ruiz showed me how their UV light made the dye bloom like a ghost. Then we set a small battery camera up high in Rick's garage, pointed at the shelf where the tool set lived. One more on my porch aimed at my back door. One above my basement stairs that looked like a motion sensor and was not a motion sensor. I am a man who can learn new tools when he has to." The detectives were patient, answering questions briskly, moving on. The plan, as the police sketched it, was simple. I would not be at home the night the theft happened. I would leave my truck in the driveway to hold the shape of my presence, but I would sleep at the motel on Route 12 and have dinner in the diner where everyone on the evening shift knows my name. I would keep my receipts. Meanwhile, surveillance would sit down the block and wait. When the call came in, they would take it as a routine property crime, then ask permission to search my basement. The uniformed officers assigned to the call would already know where the cameras were and what to look for. If David and Brianna did exactly what they described on the tape, the uniformed officers would find the Makita set, hit it with UV, light it up like a holiday. The camera would show who carried it in. They would arrest my son and his wife for false reporting, burglary, and conspiracy. The paperwork would take the rest of the night. It was a good plan. It depended on the ugliness in my kitchen being exactly the ugliness I heard. But when people think they are smarter than the world, they repeat themselves. That is a law as old as human pride. I kept my body moving that week the way I do when grief threatens to anchor me to the floor. I got my hair cut. I changed the oil in the truck. I vacuumed the living room until the vacuum did not pick up anything new. I went to Dr. Patel and did her battery of tests, numbers and shapes and words to remember and words to repeat, questions about today's date and the name of the president. She is good at what she does, not because she speaks carefully, but because she listens fully. She knows when the person in front of her is afraid to be seen. "You are not demented," she said gently at the end, when I was tired of words and tired of pretending I was not tired. "You are grieving and you are old, which means some things take longer than they used to. I will write a capacity letter. I will say you are fully able to manage your financial and personal affairs." "Thank you," I said, and meant it more deeply than the words sounded. "Walter," she said as I stood. "Do you have someone you can trust?" "Yes," I said. "A few someones." "Then tell them where your documents are," she said. "And if anyone tells you that you cannot decide for yourself, call me." I took her letter straight to my lawyer's office and signed documents until the sun moved from one side of the blinds to the other. A living trust in my name that would require 2 independent physicians to declare me incapacitated before any successor trustee could act. A durable power of attorney assigned to my sister in Michigan, who is stubborn and kind and allergic to lies. A will that carved David out of anything he could pawn and left college money for my granddaughters in a way that could not be touched by their parents. A letter to my pastor sealed and placed in my lawyer's safe, to be opened if I died suddenly. All of this felt like building a wall in a flood. But it was also like laying a floor, anchoring, leveling, making something true that would hold weight. Friday was the day. I knew because Brianna casually said she had booked a dinner for just us at the new place downtown and wondered if I could watch the girls for a few hours. She never trusted me with bedtime before, but sudden trust is often a mask on someone who wants to get you to open the door. I smiled and said I would love to, then called my neighbor, Alice, whose cookies can make my granddaughters talk about anything. She agreed to take them to her house for s'mores and a movie. I told her there might be police cars later and that if there were, it was because the world sometimes notices itself and insists on fairness. Alice is 79, has a sense of humor as dry as an empty well, and has seen more than I will ever know. I will keep the girls till you call, she said. Do not worry. It rained again that night, a thin, steady rain that blackened the street and caught the streetlights in its skin. I took my small overnight bag to the Route 12 motel and checked in under my own name. I paid cash. Hey, Walt, the night clerk said. Big game tonight. Bigger, I said, and he laughed like I had told him a joke. I ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes at the diner and kept the receipt. I sat in a corner booth by the window and watched the condensation slide down the glass. Then I drove back past my street at 7:30 and did not turn. I circled to the grocery store lot a few blocks away, parked between a delivery truck and a sedan that looks like every other sedan on the road, and waited. The call came at 8:13. I did not pick up. I let it go to voicemail and looked down at my hands on the steering wheel. The left knuckle is wider than the right from a break I never set in 1972. The nails are clean. Linda used to evaluate my hands when I came inside, as if they were a weather report. Dry air, chance of splinters, she would say, kissing my scars like they were medals. Memory is a tug and a bomb. At 8:18, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text, Dad, where are you? We are at dinner. Just checking. They are at dinner, I said aloud to the empty car. Of course they are. Detective Rowan texted me a minute later, they are not at dinner. Patrol on scene. Hold tight. The story of what happened next was told to me later in a dozen small descriptions that assembled like a puzzle. My son parked down the block. Brianna walked up the street in a hooded rain jacket that made her look like any other woman running in to borrow sugar. She had a key to my back door because I had given it to her. That detail still makes my skin burn. She let herself in like a daughter should be able to do. She left the door cracked. David came around the side of the house 2 minutes later, carrying the Makita set in a black trash bag. He walked past the hydrangea I had pruned too late last year, past the stack of cedar I was saving for a bench. He stepped inside and went down the basement stairs. He did not look up at the camera. He lifted the lid of my workbench and set the Makita box quietly where my old planer used to sit. There are moments in life when the universe seems indecently quiet. The officers sitting in the unmarked sedan felt it too. They are really going to do it, one said softly. At 8:29, David called the police. He put on a careful voice I did not recognize and said he was worried about his father, who was confused tonight and had done something rash. He said our neighbor's tools were missing and that he had just found a box that did not belong in the basement, and could someone please come before there was a misunderstanding. He said the words misunderstanding and concern 3 times in 2 minutes. They monitored his call as it was routed to dispatch and dispatched themselves. When the marked unit rolled up, David met them in the driveway with his hands held out like a peace offering. Brianna stood in the doorway with her eyes wide. This is a show I taught him not to like when he was 4 and pretended to be hurt to avoid picking up his toys. I failed at something that day. Sometimes that is the worst part of being a parent, realizing your failures have grown legs and language. Evening, Officer Neely said. We got a call. Thank you for coming, David said in the gentle tone people use on skittish dogs. He is not himself lately. Where is he now? I do not know, David said. He said he needed a drive. They asked permission to look in the basement. They had brought a second unit to Rick's to take his statement. He had practiced his disgruntled face, which is not a stretch for him. Patrol asked to open the workbench. David stepped back politely. Here, he said. I found this when I was down here earlier looking for him. It is not ours. The officer lifted the lid to reveal a bright blue case like the ocean in a postcard. He clicked it open. The drill and the driver and their bits lay inside like soldiers at attention. Officer Neely reached for the small flashlight at his belt. He clicked it on. Then he clicked on the other one. The UV beam slid across the plastic. The mark bloomed blue-white like a secret constellation. Sir, Neely said, his voice different now, formal as a folded flag. I am going to ask you to keep your hands where I can see them. What? David said. The camera in the staircase recorded his face when the officers explained. Brianna's mouth was a clean O. She tried to say she had never seen that box before. She tried to say she had been at dinner. She tried to cry. He tried to put his hand on her shoulder. Officer Neely asked them to stand apart. Detective Rowan stepped through my back door at 8:47 with her badge out. David Hale, she said. Brianna Hale. You are being detained on suspicion of burglary, conspiracy, and filing a false police report. Please do not say anything. Your words will not help you tonight. I would be lying if I said my heart did not leap up and pound my ribs like I was running. It did. I was parked 2 blocks away in a grocery store lot, sitting there like a man who had been told the weather will shift if he just waits with his hands at 10 and 2. I watched the street down the hill and saw the blue-red stripes paint the wet road. 3 minutes after Rowan's text, got them, I exhaled for the first time in an hour and realized my neck hurt. I called Alice. I will pick up the girls in the morning, I said. Does tomorrow smell like pancakes to you? She laughed and said of course and asked me if I wanted to come by and eat with them. I need to go to the station, I said. But save me one. Please. At the station, they took my statement as if it were a rib in a larger skeleton they were assembling. The audio file. The neuropsychologist's letter. My receipts. The photographs. The marked tools. Brianna's fingerprints on the Makita handle. David's on the drill. There is a certain kind of relief in watching facts line up and hold hands with each other. At 1 in the morning, Detective Rowan walked me to the door, the night air cool and clean. It is not over, she said. It will be court and red faces and people telling you they were pushed into it. It will be neighbors who think you are hard and sons of neighbors who say you should have forgiven. But tonight, the right people went to jail. Thank you, I said. For not letting me be alone in it. You were not, she said simply. And you are not. Go get some sleep. Sleep came in a clumsy rush, the way it does after a day that shifts the map underneath you. I woke up at 6 with a stiffness in my back and the odd clarity that sometimes follows a storm. I made coffee. I stood on the porch and watched the neighbors pretend not to look. Then I went inside and started making a list on a yellow pad titled Next Steps. Next steps began with sit the girls down. That is how it should begin. They are 9 and 11 and too smart for comforting lies. I took them to the diner, the same one that keeps my corner booth out of some old habit of kindness. We ordered pancakes and bacon and a pile of strawberries. I told them that their parents had made a very bad choice, one that hurt me and would have hurt them if it had gone on. I told them the police were involved and the courts would decide what came next. I told them none of this was their fault. I said it twice. The older one, Piper, looked like she had already guessed. The younger, Rose, pushed her strawberries around until the juice stained the plate and said, quiet but clear, I heard Daddy say you forgot the kettle, Grandpa. I took a breath. I did forget once, I said. Before I put the new kettle in. Before the timer. Before I wrote a note that I stuck next to the stove. We all forget sometimes, baby. That is why we build habits that help us remember. Rose nodded like I had given her a small assignment she could succeed at. Piper asked, where will we live? Her voice lifted on the last word like the end of a violin note. You will live with your mother for now, I said. Your father's sister is coming to help. There will be a lot of meetings and a lot of people saying a lot of things. When you are with me, this house is yours. Your bed is made. Your toothbrush is where you left it. Whatever comes, that does not change. It is one thing to say you will be strong. It is another to sit across from children you love and not flinch. Strength is sometimes keeping your mouth from saying something that would feel good and burn later. After pancakes, we went to the hardware store and bought a small rain gauge. We stopped by the river and emptied it 3 times, just to see how short 72 hours can be. The days that followed were as messy as Detective Rowan predicted. My son called from county with a voice so small it might have been a child hiding under a table. He apologized. He said he had not meant to hurt anyone, which is the kind of apology that asks you to forget definitions. He said Brianna had pushed him, which is almost certainly true and also utterly inadequate. I told him I had hired a lawyer. For me, not for him. You have to get your own, I said, and hung up before he could pour out a story to soak me. Brianna called twice from her mother's phone and left messages in a voice that borrowed all the tenderness she had ever used and stapled it to fear. She said she was sorry. She said she had panicked. She said her own father had been cruel, so this was complicated, as if history excuses harm. She asked me to think of the girls. I did. That is why I did not call back. The district attorney charged them with conspiracy and filing a false report and burglary. Their lawyer argued for a plea. The judge, a woman I had once built a fence for when her twins were 6, looked at the evidence, which was good not because it was dramatic but because it was boring. The kind of evidence that is anchored in time and date stamps and ink that does not smear. It is tedious work, building a case this way. It is also the only work that stands up when someone blows on it. Brianna took a plea deal. David did too. They admitted what they did. They blamed stress. They said they were afraid of losing the house if I fell and needed a home that cost money. They said words that are half true and used them like soap to wash their hands. The judge listened and then spoke, not to them, but to me. Mr. Hale, she said, it is a terrible thing to be betrayed by your own child. The law cannot make that less terrible. It can only mark the harm and make it harder to do again. If you want a no-contact order, you have it. I do, I said. And the words cut, even as they protected. They were sentenced to probation and community service and restitution to Rick for his door that David scuffed when he rushed last Wednesday's practice run. They were ordered to attend a class about elder abuse that probably will not fix anything but will require them to sit in a room and hear their actions named. There is a clean relief in hearing a thing named correctly. After the hearing, I sat on the courthouse steps and watched the afternoon light change the face of the old brick. Detective Rowan sat beside me without saying anything for a long time. "What now?" I asked finally. "You live," she said. "You make your house a place where the people who deserve you feel safe. You put your money where your values are so nothing can sell what matters most. You take a class, not because you need it, but because it will put you in a room with other people who understand what it is to be 11 and to watch adults hurt each other." "I am 74, I said. "I meant your granddaughters," she said, and I nodded. "So I did what I know to do. I built. I moved my coin collection into a safe deposit box and updated my inventory. I took the girls to the lake and taught them how to sand a rough board, how to read grain, how to tell when your hand is moving with wood and not against it. We made a bench for Alice's porch. We delivered it together and let her scold us for not cutting the back angle just so. The girls rolled their eyes and hugged her anyway. I hired a young carpenter to help me teach a Saturday class, free for veterans and their children. We installed a pegboard that would make any thrift store manager proud. We painted the shop lights for fun with little enamel shades Piper picked out. We invented a system for the broom that meant you had to hang it the right way or accept a penalty of one joke told badly. We made jokes badly on purpose because laughter is a kind of glue. I wrote letters to my son that I did not send. In them, I did not scold him. I did not explain what he already knows. I told him how old I was when I first realized my father was smaller inside than his voice had suggested, and how much it hurt to understand that this is part of being human. I told him I would someday sit across from him if he did the work of telling the truth to himself. I did not promise anything else. Promises should not be made when you are tender from being cut. I did one more thing, because Linda would have told me it was the only way to set the story down. I took the gray binder that had saved me and I made a second one. I labeled it plainly, "If you ever need this." On the first page, I wrote a letter in blue ink, not because blue is sentimental, but because it can be photocopied in a way black cannot. In it, I said, "I am Walter Hale. I have 2 granddaughters and a house full of cedar smells and light. I am not confused. I forget sometimes, like everyone my age. If you find this, it means something has gone wrong. Here is who you call. Here is the name of the doctor who listened to me without deciding the end of my story. Here is the password for the safe that only holds documents, not money, because I am trying to be smarter than the worst day. I put the binder behind the flour canister in the pantry, because that is where I always put things I do not want to lose. I told my sister, my pastor, and Detective Rowan where it lives. I told Alice, who rolled her eyes and said, "I will come get it if the kitchen is full of fools." The last time I saw my son, he was leaving the courthouse with his head down, walking beside a woman who used to look through me like I was inconvenient furniture and now looked past me like I was a ghost. He did not see me. That is probably for the best. If he had, I do not know what I would have done. I would like to imagine I would have lifted my hand and said, "You are not the worst thing you have done." Maybe I will say that someday. Maybe I will not. Forgiveness is not a factory. It does not produce on demand. It grows where it is watered and weeded. I am trying. As for my house, it is still mine. The porch still holds in summer and shudders in winter like an old ship that refuses to sink. The hydrangea may bloom again if I cut at the right time. The rosemary has new growth. The girls' toothbrushes stand together like soldiers beside the sink. On the refrigerator, there is a drawing rose made of me at my workbench, my hands too big and my smile too careful. In the corner she wrote, in the block letters of a child who clenches her tongue when she concentrates, "Grandpa is strong." I do not always feel that, but I know what it means. Strength is not never being afraid. Strength is planting yourself in truth so firmly that when the storm comes with a plan to write you out of your own life, you have already built the page it cannot tear. Strength is catching the knife before it lands and saying, with no drama, only clarity, "I see you." And then dialing the number of someone who will say, "I see it too." Sometimes at night, when the house is soft and I can hear the low song of the refrigerator, I play the first 20 seconds of that recording. Not to relive it. To remember what a voice sounds like when it believes it will get away with something. And then I set my phone down, turn off the lamp, and let the dark be just dark, not a place for planning or a room for fear. In the morning, there will be coffee and the soft thunder of girls' feet on the stairs and the smell of fresh shavings in the shop. There will be cedar and light and the satisfaction of a line cut true. There will be a life I am living, not a life I am watching someone else sell.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.